Well, here we are called Gateway Bible Church, not Gateway Community Church, Gateway Baptist. I mean, there's so many. I could go on for an hour of the different names, Community Church of Gateway. We are Gateway Bible Church, and we are that because we preach the Word of God verse by verse, because we believe that the Word of God has power to change lives one verse at a time. That also means that we don't shy away from passages when they're hard or when they're difficult. And as a result of that, in this past year, we've lost some people from our congregation because they were convicted or they didn't like what God's Word had to say. And I'm never going to shy away from passages because they're hard. And if God's Word calls something sin, I'm going to call something sin. If God's Word says to love, then I'm going to say we need to love. But we here at Gateway Bible Church, we study God's Word verse by verse, word by word, and we will never skip a passage. Today's text is an example of that. Today's text is one where as a pastor, you read it, and you're like, man, it is Palm Sunday. I could just preach a Palm Sunday message, but we don't skip over verses when they're hard. So, ladies in the room, please do not tune me out this morning. Just know that this text, I studied it cautiously and read and listened, and it may seem degrading at first. I promise you it is far from it. It is anything but derogatory. So just hear me out until we close in prayer this morning, because it is a good word. But before we jump into it, I don't know about you, but the last 4 studies we've gone through since 1 Peter 2:12, then submission to authority, then last week where we looked at submitting to your bosses at work and suffering, I have been a big, tall conviction sandwich. I have just been going through my life line by line and thinking, where can people find sin in my life? And thinking, do people just see Jesus? And as I've been going through it, God has just been bringing to the surface so many areas in my life that I can improve on. And as I've been thinking of these ideas and asking, it's just like I can't stop thinking. Like even this morning I woke up and I was thinking, man, I should pray the minute I wake up in the morning. And so I started praying, and God just put this thought in my head: help me to do only the things that glorify you today, and help me to stay away from everything that doesn't. I was like, wow, that's so simple. However, I say all that because these last 4 weeks, the theme has been that persecution is entering the church back in AD 65. And we remember it was persecution just personally, politically, at work, in the family. And Peter's saying no matter what happens, your lives need to be so holy, so set apart that they find no fault in you. They just find Jesus. And so we've looked at verse 12 of chapter 2 that our lives need to be holy. We looked at political, we looked at work, we looked at suffering. Now we're going into the household today. We're going to look at what to do, how to respond to that persecution in the family, in the marriage. And so let's turn over to 1 Peter chapter 3, verses 1 through 7. And as I said earlier, he's writing 6 of our 7 verses this morning to the wives. And here's what's cool. We have this word in 2023 called feminism, which is all about women's empowerment, women, taking the reins. We need a women president. We need this. We need that. And sure, I've had women managers, and there's nothing sinful with that. My wife is a leader in Stonefire's corporate office, and that's great. I want her to take over the whole company one day. But in God's house, in God's family, there's a design, and it's a perfect design. And so when I said that this whole passage isn't degrading to women, the fact of the matter of what Peter's saying here is that in this day and age, if the husband said, honey, we're Hindus, the wife was like, I'm a Hindu. And whatever religion the husband adapted or adopted, that was the family's religion. No questions asked. So the fact that he's writing this to wives in an effort that the wives, he's going to say, may win their husbands to the Lord, is showing that the women in a sort of rebellious act followed Jesus. They said, no, I am choosing Jesus. And that's what's creating persecution in the home now, because they're not adopting whatever the husband's religion is. So now there's a wedge in there. And so it's creating this friction in the household. And so Peter is writing to that. But I know it's like, man, likewise, wives, be subject to your own husband. He's saying this because the woman had made a choice on their own. And again, wives, I'm not saying rise up at feminism, rebel against your husbands, but they're making this decision for Christ. So let's look at what Peter has to say in 1 Peter chapter 3. Likewise, wives, be subject to your own husbands, so that even if some do not obey the word, they may be won without a word by the conduct of their wives, when they see your respectful and pure conduct. Do not let your adorning be external, the braiding of hair and the putting on of gold jewelry or the clothing that you wear, but let your adorning be the hidden person of the heart, with the imperishable beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which in God's sight is very precious. For this is how the holy women who hoped in God used to adorn themselves, by submitting to their own husbands, as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord. And you are her children, if you do good and do not fear anything that is frightening. Get your elbows ready, ladies. Likewise, husbands, live with your wives in an understanding way, showing honor to the woman as the weaker vessel, since they are heirs with you of the grace of life, so that your prayers may not be hindered. Let's pray. God, thank you so much for this morning. Thank you, Lord, for another opportunity to gather, another opportunity to study your word. And Lord, I just pray that you will reign supreme in this body, God. We gather for you, Lord. We gather to make your name known and to know you more. So I just pray that you open our eyes to behold wondrous things from your law. Speak through me, God, and just help me to decrease so you may increase. We love you so much. In Jesus' name, amen. So this morning, my sermon is entitled, Glory to God in the Houses. I'm very proud of that one. That was very creative. Glory to God in the houses. Because we need to glorify God in our lives. We need to glorify God in our submission to rulers. We need to glorify God in the workplace. And most definitely, we need to glorify God in our homes. And so as we approach the text this morning, my first point is let your walk scream. So Peter has used this word a few times as he's rolled one into another. Keep your conduct among the Gentiles, be subject, servants, be subject. And now he's moving into the house. And he says, likewise, or therefore, likewise, wives, be subject to your husbands. Let me modernize it for you. Likewise, wives. Hey, wives, listen up. Just like we are all called to submit to the government, to our bosses, in that same way, you're also called to submit to your husband. And remember, submission to the government isn't just blindly following every word they say, but it's respectfully and esteeming them as placed in that position by God, coming under them and following them. And so wives, in the same way, you are also called to come under your husband's leadership, to highly esteem him as put in that position by God. And notice he doesn't say be subject to your own Bible-believing, Reformed Christian husbands. No. He says be subject to your own husbands. Not to your neighbor's husband, not to your boss's husband. Be subject to your own husbands. That's very crucial. If I walk up to Diana and say, Diana, this is how you need to spend your money, she can just roll her eyes at me and move on. But if I say, hey, Allie, this is how we're going to budget, then that's how our family is going to budget. And Allie is going to trust that I have sought the Lord in that decision. We'll get more to that. Be subject to your own husbands. Even if your husband is not a believer, be subject to your own husbands. Honor him as Christ has appointed him head of the family. And I think at this time, I'm seeing so many parallels, so many similarities between Peter's writings and the church in 2023. And I think at this time, there's a tendency where if a wife is a believer and the husband is not, the wife feels that they do not need to listen to the husband. And it's sad that especially nowadays, wives, and I'm sorry, I promise the pendulum's going to twist at the end of my sermon. But just because your husband's not a believer, God's word is crystal clear. Be subject to your own husbands. God's design for the family is that the man is the head, just like Christ is the head of the church. And I know you guys are thinking, why? Why is Peter telling me to submit to my own husband? He doesn't come to church. I'm here by myself, blah, blah, blah. Why? So that even if some do not obey the word, they may be won without a word by the conduct of their wives. Imagine if all the guys at the men's breakfast are standing there trying to get the last piece of bacon. And this is a highly made up testimony story. So if you're like, I know that guy. No, I made this up when I was... They're around and it goes, hey, Earl, we haven't heard your testimony yet. Earl, how did you come to know Jesus? Oh, it was that Betty. I was out drinking, being selfish, hanging out with the boys and doing whatever I wanted to make myself happy. And she was always just humming around the house, so joyful and happy. And finally, after a while, I just said, Betty, why are you like this? And she just kept telling me about Jesus. And if Jesus could make someone living with me so happy, I had to give him a chance. Wives, submit to your husbands because it glorifies God. Because if even some do not obey the word, they may be won without a word by the conduct of their wives when they see your respectful and pure conduct. Notice what he doesn't say. He doesn't say, wives, submit to your husbands because it's fun and easy. Wives, submit to your husbands because you want to and it's just going to be the natural progression of your... No. So that even if some do not obey the word, they may be won without a word by the conduct of their lives. It always comes back to God, church. The reason that we submit to authority, to our bosses and wives, to your husbands, is because that is what God has asked of us. And he gets the glory from it. Even if your husband doesn't know the Lord, your respectful and pure conduct could win them to the Lord when they see a difference in you. Imagine that. Imagine if someone came to know Jesus merely because they saw how you live. I know the text that Dave read for us this morning during worship was a little read mid-worship service. Usually you read, you sing Blessed Be the Name, then read Psalms or something, to go along. But it's let's sing worship songs and then read the story of when sin entered into the world. But the fact of the matter is we have verses like this, submit to your husbands, because sin entered the world. And if you would, just flip over to Genesis chapter 3 real quick with me, because this is so crucial. In a pre-fall world, in Genesis chapter 2, there was never a need for this verse because the family operated perfectly. Eve willingly, gladly submitted, and she didn't even know she needed to submit because it just happened naturally. But sin enters the world. So Genesis chapter 3, looking at verse 14, the Lord God said to the serpent, because you have done this, cursed are you above all livestock and above all beasts of the field. On your belly you shall go, and dust you shall eat all the days of your life. So first off, if you're scared of snakes now, think about it. Satan wasn't slithering on his belly before this. I think he was walking around on 2 feet. Verse 15, I will put enmity between you and the woman. It makes sense why Allie hates snakes more than I do. And between your offspring and her offspring, he shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. To the woman he said, I will surely multiply your pain in childbearing. In pain you shall bring forth children. Here, focus here, everyone. Your desire shall be contrary to your husband, but he shall rule over you. That right there is why we have these verses. That right there is why marriages end in divorce. That right there is why there's frictions in the households. That could be translated in the NIV and NASB. It says the woman's desire here is for her husband. And I used to read that and think, oh, hubba hubba. Like I want my wife's desire to be for me. But if you read it in the ESV, it says, your desire shall be contrary to your husband. And when it says your desire is for your husband, it's not like you desire your husband in that sense. It's you desire your husband's position in the family. You desire your husband's authority. And so that's why it says that your desire should be contrary. You want your husband out of that. You want to be the leader, and he is in yours. It's contrary. And as a result of that, and he shall rule over you. That quite literally means that he will assert his authority. So if you're coming and you're trying to take your husband's position and he has to lay down the law, it's also assuming that the fact that he shall rule over you, he's not responding in grace either. He's getting angry and using his authority to take it back. This is a result of the fall. It is sin. And as a result of the fall, women must actively make an effort to gladly, willingly submit and come under their husbands. This is why in a family where the wife runs the show and the dad is a beat-down loser in the house, this is not why. This is why we see this. A result of the fall is why we have women who think that they run the show and the guy is just an accessory. I've seen this in some parts of my own family where it's the girl show and the guy's just there to help her live her life. This is why we also have men who go to such rash extremes to demonstrate their authority in the house, that ruin families that way. It's a result of the fall. And I must say, if there is a man who goes to such extremes physically to exhort his authority, your next call better be to the sheriff's department or to me, because that's not okay. That's a result of sin. So back to 1 Peter chapter 3. Likewise, wives, be subject to your own husbands, so that even if some do not obey the word, they may be won without a word by the conduct of their wives when they see your respectful and pure conduct. Do not let your adorning be external, the braiding of hair and the putting on of gold jewelry or the clothing you wear, but let your adorning be the hidden person of the heart with the imperishable beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which in God's sight is very precious. Our second point this morning is take it easy on the bling. Take it easy on the bling. I know you're like, man, last week John told us we need to take the bus and not the Bentley, and now he's telling us to take it easy on the bling. So this week, let's trade in our diamond earrings. I'm totally kidding. This verse is not a call for women to dress lowly and to stop taking care of themselves. Ladies, don't come dressed Amish next week. That's not what this verse is saying. What Peter is saying here is to take care of your hearts. And I make the Amish joke, but this is one of those things where if you don't rightly handle Scripture and you just pick and choose, you can totally blow a verse out of proportion. If I just came and preached a verse on women don't adorn yourself like this, we would all show up dressed like the Amish next week. But that's not what Peter's saying here. What he's saying is that you need to take care of your hearts. In 1 Samuel 16, I'm going to paraphrase here, but it says, God doesn't look at men like we do. He only looks at the heart. And what was very common in this day and age, you can see it in what's it called when you make figurines? Sculptures, yes. When you look at art and sculptures from this time period, the women had really exquisite braids and gold jewelry and earrings and all these adornings to their outfits. And it was very common for the wives to just go to such extremes to try to win their husband's affection each and every day. I mean, imagine if you had to wake up and dress to win your husband's affection every single day. That's basically what's happening here. And so what Peter's saying here is God doesn't look at that. God cares about your heart. And so don't let the main thing about you be your earrings or your jewelry or your outfit. Let it be the hidden person of the heart. So many women take up their identity, and men, again, this isn't a sermon to bash women. It's all going to come to a point. We just got to get to verse 7. But it's so common for women to identify themselves and to find their worth in their dress, in what their handbag, if they have Louis or Coach or whatever, Michael Kors, whoever they're carrying on their hand or what they're wearing, and they find worth and value in how they look and appear. But the word adorning literally means to make more beautiful or attractive. So Peter's saying, ladies, do not let your earrings and nice dresses be what makes you beautiful. Rather, let what makes you beautiful the imperishable beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit. That's adorning literally means to make beautiful. And so ladies, let what makes you beautiful be a heart focused on serving Christ. I love how he says this. Verse 4, but let your adorning be the hidden person of the heart with the imperishable beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit. If the fact that it's imperishable wasn't enough, look how he ends verse 4, which in God's sight is very precious. Imperishable beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit. We're all going to get old. My nice hair is going to turn bright white like my grandpa's. Our hard-earned abs are going to turn into well-aged flabs. But a gentle and quiet spirit will never perish. So there's a decision to be made today. And yes, he's writing to the ladies, but men, there's a decision to be made. Are we more concerned with what man finds precious, what our friends and family finds cool? Or are we more concerned with what God finds precious? Again, Peter's not saying that you have to let yourselves go or that you should let yourselves go. Because then we could bring in Paul, I buffet my body and make it my slave and all those things. What it means is that the most important defining factor of our lives, church, needs to be our heart. What makes us the most attractive is our hearts. The inner man, the hidden person of the heart. Peter is now going to bring our attention to Sarah. Before he does that, verse 5, for this is how the holy women who hoped in God used to adorn themselves, by submitting to their own husbands. So he quickly brushes over, hey, remember all the biblical women you've read about growing up from the Old Testament? This is how they made themselves beautiful. They submitted, and not only did they make themselves beautiful by submitting, but they hoped in God. They had full hope that all of God's words were true, and so because of that, they willingly submitted to their husbands. That's awesome. I'm not saying it's awesome because I'm a husband. I'm saying that's awesome because their hope in God led them to obedience. And now in verse 6, he's going to bring our attention to Sarah. As Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord, and you are her children, if you do good and do not fear anything that is frightening. Sarah is another woman who hoped in God by submitting to Abraham. And ladies, if you're in this room and you think your husband is hard to submit to, think about Sarah. He comes in one day, hey babe, we're moving to an entire different country. Let's go, pack everything up. And she's like, okay, packing it up. Or imagine he comes home, hey, our firstborn, our one and only son, I'm going to go kill him. I'm taking him out. Load him up on the, and she's like, oh, okay, here's the wood. Like, you think you have it rough. Like, what do you mean you can't paint the walls white? Like, no. Abraham came in and said, hey, I'm gonna sacrifice our son. And she submitted. She didn't fight, or at least we don't have it written here that she fought him. And so, ladies, he's bringing your attention, like, as Sarah obeyed Abraham. There's a lot there. It was hard for her to do so, but she did, calling him Lord, and you are her children. I know Abraham gets all the credit. Father Abraham had many sons. But for today, it's Mother Sarah had many daughters, and many daughters had Mother Sarah. It doesn't flow as smooth. But Peter here says that you are her children. Just like we are all descendants of Abraham through the promise of salvation, you're also Sarah's children as well. And so if you do good and do not fear anything, this is evident that you also have the same hope in God that Sarah had. If you do good and do not fear anything frightening. I've said this with the government. I said this last week. And so my last disclaimer of this section, everybody listen up. Not fearing anything that is frightening here means, ladies, you chose to follow Christ. Now you're going to go home to your unbelieving husband, and culture is saying that you need to submit to his religion. Don't fear that persecution. Don't fear the fact that your husband is going to be bitter with you because you followed Jesus. Don't worry about that because your hope is in God. If you're in fear because your physical safety is in jeopardy, that is not what Peter's saying here. Do not stick around in that. That is called abuse, okay? Call the authorities, call the church. Do not stay in that. Just like political and work, Peter's never saying here to stay somewhere where either A, you're going to be forced to sin, or B, you're going to be forced to be put in harm's way. That's not the purpose of this. The purpose is if you're facing persecution politically, at your job, with your friends, or here in your house, don't fear it because you're honoring God by taking a stand on his word. Understood? All right, ladies. I'm done with you guys. Husbands, point number 3 this morning. Definitely not off the hook. Definitely not off the hook. Today's message could have been very easy for the husbands to be like, you hearing that, babe? Submit, 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 submit. But the reason that we are in this predicament today is because of the husbands. My good friend Marcus in the back once told me that Eve could have said when she was tempted, hey, I was just a rib at the time. But the fact of the matter is, as we looked at a few weeks ago, sin goes generation to generation to generation to generation because of the husbands. Yes, Eve was not commanded by God to not eat the fruit. It was Adam. Adam received it. And Adam, as the head of his family, should have led his wife. But Adam didn't. And so Eve, as a result, was deceived, but Adam willingly disobeyed. There's a difference there. Eve was deceived by the serpent. Adam knew and willingly disobeyed. And so that's why Paul in Romans says that sin is passed down from generation to generation through the seed, through the man. And so we're here because Adam disobeyed God, and sin is now in the world, and sin is rampant. Verse 7, likewise, husbands, live with your wives in an understanding way, showing honor to the woman as the weaker vessel, since they are heirs with you of the grace of life, so that your prayers may not be hindered. There's so much beauty in God's design, and if everyone was perfectly following God, the beauty of that would be on display like all the flowers on the mountains around us right now. I always hear that women have the hardest job to submit to their husbands. Guys just get away scotch-free. But here's the fact. Women are called to submit. Men are called to die. In Ephesians, Paul says, Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. How did Christ love the church? Come on Friday at 7 p.m. No, we know he laid his life down for it. He died on the cross for the church. So women are to submit to their husbands. Men, you're called to lay your life down for your wife. And when that happens, the fact of the matter is when a man is truly following Christ and laying his life down and loving his wife in that manner, the wife wants to submit. The wife wants to come under. What usually happens when there's friction is back to Genesis 3, is the wife is wanting her husband's role. But why would a wife feel the need to take authority? Is probably because there's no authority to be had. Men, love your wives like Christ loved the church. And so here Peter says, likewise, husbands, listen up. Live with your wives in an understanding way. Understanding, that word here is being used as an adjective, which means to live sympathetically, consciously aware of thoughts and feelings. So husbands, live with your wives in a sympathetic and understanding way, showing honor to her, showing honor to the woman as a weaker vessel. I know you're probably like, oh, John, that's really messed up that you just said women are the weaker vessel. Look at sports. Women are physiologically, is that the right word? Physically weaker than men. That's how God created us. Because men are to go out and be the protectors, the providers. You don't need to go out and be war horses, ladies. That's your husband's job. But men, because of that, show honor to your wives as the weaker vessel. Live with them in a sympathetic and understanding way. I don't cry. I don't like crying. Like I said last week, I was raised in an I'll give you a reason to cry family. I always joke that I remove my tear ducts because of that reason. But when Allie cries, I'm like, why are you crying? And she can vouch for me. I'm still growing in this area, but sometimes I'm like, can you not cry right now? Now's not the time. Stop. It makes me uncomfortable because I'm not created that way. But I need to understand that whatever is bothering my wife in that moment is bothering her. So as a husband, I need to sympathize with her and I need to understand. Now, if she's crying because we have to go to church on Sunday, it's like, hey, babe, I cannot sympathize with that. We're going to church. But if she's crying because something's bothering her as the husband, as the leader, I need to lay my desires down and die to that to sympathetically and understandingly live with my wife. And so husbands, if you're living in a household where your wife is trying to lead and take authority and you're like, stop it! Understand that A, that's a result of sin and the fall, but B, look inward and think, man, am I loving my wife in a biblical way? Am I leading my wife? Am I somebody that my wife wants to follow? We are to live with our wives sympathetically, being aware of their thoughts and feelings and holding them in high esteem. And this next part is so crucial, and I think that in the church, the topic of women is so taboo. It's like, man, I joked 2 weeks ago or was it last week? Last week when Connie came up to the pulpit to thank Allie for the women's conference, some of your heart rate's like, oh my gosh, what's a woman doing behind the pulpit? And she just wanted to say thank you to Allie. But we think when the topic of women in the church comes in, it's like we pull out our list of rules. Okay, but the fact of the matter is, look what it says here. Since they are heirs with you, some manuscripts say, since you are joint heirs of the grace of life. Our wives, the women of the church, are going to have full, equal access to the inheritance in heaven, just like we do. So it's not like we just tell our wives to submit to us because we're king of the house, because that's just how it is. No. We show them honor. We show them understanding and live with them in this way because they are joint heirs. We're not better than them. We are all joint heirs to the inheritance that is going to be ours on the day when we get to heaven. So that your prayers may not be hindered. Husbands, if you're going and getting down on your knees beside the bed and going, God, please just like help my wife to live with me in an understanding way. Like, God, I'm so sick of my wife arguing with me. And then you come out of the bedroom and go, why is this on the floor here? Why is this? Why are the dishes in the sink? Why? And then you're like, oh man, God, why is my wife always so bitter and angry with me? You're the cause of it. You're not living with your wife as God has called you to. If you're going to stir up all this division in the house and then pray that there's peace, be a peacemaker. Be a leader. The fact of the matter here is what Peter's saying is twofold. If you're in a Christian household and you want peace and you're being a peacemaker and you really feel like before God you're loving your wife in this way and you're praying for her, then God is going to change her heart. If you're walking in the light, then God's going to use that light to point out sin in her life. But if you're causing division in your household and praying for peace, you're the leader. If you're the divider, there's never going to be peace. Your prayers are hindered in that way. But the contrary is if your wife is not a believer, if your house is unequally yoked the opposite way and your wife isn't saved, and you're praying for her salvation, but your life doesn't match up to the Word of God, then how can you expect her to come to know God if you're not exemplifying that for her? Sin has corrupted so many good things. I won't make a country music joke today. And Satan is always going to come for marriages. When Pastor Wayne asked me to step in and fill this role last year, Allie and I had been married for 3 months. And when I went and met with my mentor and I told him that I accepted the job, he then circled back and said, wait, how long have you been married for? And I told him, and he said, brother, if you started with that, I would have told you to never accept the job. He said, you just painted a big red target on your back for the enemies. Like, you're a young married man in the pulpit and Satan hates it. He's going to come for your marriage. And it's true. Look around you. The divorce rate is 50-50. By God's grace, God has protected our marriage, and Ali and I do a very good job to daily solidify our marriage in the Word and in prayer. But Satan comes for so many good things, and the best thing is marriage, because marriage is one of the clearest ways that the gospel is displayed. God and His church. And so when we get divorces, we're conveying that God can divorce the church. When we get divorces as Christians, we're saying that we can lose our salvation. But we can't lose our salvation. God will never divorce the church. And that's why marriage is a picture of that, because in sickness and in health, through good and bad, thick and thin, we stick it out. But Satan loves to attack marriages. And when divorces happen, he's like, yes, another one. He goes for it. He loves chaos and confusion and division. That is where Satan thrives. He's like mold, dark, smelly, ugh. That's Satan. When division and chaos is happening, that's when he thrives. Gateway Bible Church, when this happens, when marriages split and end, when there's friction in the household, that's when the testimony of Jesus Christ is hurt. Gateway, God's glory is at stake in everything that we do. Every single thing we do needs to revolve around the idea, is God being glorified? What you say, what you think, what you do, what you listen to, what you look at, God's glory is at stake. If what you're going to do, say, think, or listen to doesn't glorify God, then don't do it. It's that simple, but we love to play in the gray area. And you know who else is in the gray area? It's Satan. Wives, submit to your husbands. Because as Paul says in Ephesians 6, because this is what you're called to do, as Peter here says in 1 Peter 3, so that if they don't know Christ, they can be won to Him. Wives, you submit to your husbands because your husband is dying to himself and leading you towards Christ. Husbands, die to yourselves. Love your wives. Understand that they're the weaker vessel, but also remember that they are 100% equal in the sight of God. Church, It's not always going to be easy, and husbands are not always going to be perfect. Be subject to your own husbands. Remember that. He doesn't say to your perfect husbands, be subject only when your husband is dying to himself. No. If your husband is in sin and he's not being a good husband right now, be subject to your husband so that even if some do not obey the word, yes, that means non-believers, but even believers can disobey the word. So that if some do not obey the word, they may be won without a word by the conduct. And husbands, be men that your wives want to submit to. I shouldn't say your wives. Let's be men that our wives want to submit to. Persecution is coming. Persecution is here. And it's only going to be worse. So we need to glorify God in our lives. We need to glorify God in how we submit to the government. We need to glorify God in the workplace. We need to glorify God in our homes. We need to give no area at all for people to find fault and for people to say that God is not good when they look at us. C.T. Studd says, one life will soon be past. Only what's done for Christ will last.